Okay, we are going to do what is called factor by grouping. It is a pretty straightforward process. So when you're factoring by grouping, you generally have 4 different terms going on here. The first thing that you are going to do is group, hence the word grouping, the first 2 terms together in parentheses, and group the second 2 terms together in parentheses. Now I'm going to put a plus in between here because notice that if this was just like this, it would be known as multiplication, but we know that there should be a plus because technically we are adding these 2 things together. So then we take the first group and we say, okay, what can we pull out? What is the greatest common factor of these 2 terms? And if I look at this, I can see that the greatest common factor is going to be x squared. They don't have any numbers in common, they just have variables in common, and the most that they have in common is 2 of them. If I take out an x squared, I'm left with x plus 5. Then I look at the second one, and I say, okay, what can I pull out of here? I see that I can pull out a negative 2, and I am also left negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive x. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 plus 5. When you are factoring by grouping, you should always end up where these 2 are the same thing. Basically, what you're doing is reverse claw or reverse distribution. So in order to finish this problem and to write these into 2 different factors, you take this term and put it in the first set of parentheses. And the second set of parentheses is the one that they have in common. Now let me explain to you why this works the way it does. If you think about it, we pull the term from each of the binomials. Now if we were to go backwards and go back to this, we would take our x squared and we would multiply it times x and times 5. And we would take our negative 2 and multiply it times x and times 5. Well, if we look down here, if we were to apply the claw method to reverse back to here, we would be doing the same exact thing. We would be taking the x squared, multiplying it times the x into the 5, and the negative 2 times the x into the 5. That is why we are able to rewrite it as these 2 factors, is because of that reverse distribution or that reverse claw method. So if we look at example 2, it says factor by grouping. So that's the first step, is to just group together those first 2 terms and group together those second 2 terms. Out of the first set of terms, what can be pulled out of 21 and 7y? Both of these can be divided by 7. If I pull out a 7 from 21, I'm left with 3. If I pull out a 7 from negative 7y, I'm left with negative y. Then I look at my next set of parentheses to figure out what can I pull out from 3x minus xy. Well, they don't have any numbers in common. They don't have any common factors as far as the numbers go, but they do have an x in common. So I can pull out an x. If I pull out an x from this set of parentheses, I'm left with 3 minus y. As I said in the first problem, that is exactly what I want to happen. I want it to be 3 minus y and 3 minus y. They need to be the same thing. Them being the same thing allows me to put this as 2 factors. Remember, the first parenthesis is the 2 terms, the 2 common factors that you pulled out. And the second set of parentheses is what they have in common, that parentheses they have in common. And that is factor by grouping. If you go ahead and flip your page,